I grew up thinking that family was everything, that no matter what happened, my parents would always have my back. But I couldn't have been more wrong. I don't know when it started, but I began to feel like the invisible one in my own family. While I was working hard and doing everything I could to make my parents proud, my sister seemed to be the one getting all the attention and support. She was the golden child, and I was just there. But things took a dramatic turn when my father made a promise to me. It wasn't just any promise. It was a promise about my future, my college fund. That money was meant to help me achieve my dreams, to get the education I had worked so hard for, to start my life on my own terms. It was the one thing I'd been counting on for years, and I was sure my parents knew how important it was to me. But the moment my 18th birthday came, everything changed. I found out that instead of giving me my college fund as promised, my dad and my stepmom had decided to give it to my sister. I couldn't believe it. It felt like a slap in the face. My sister hadn't earned it. She hadn't worked as hard as I had. She didn't even want to go to college. She was just coasting through life, and yet she got the money that was rightfully mine. I was devastated. I tried to keep my emotions in check, but it wasn't easy. My dad, my stepmom, they didn't even see it as a problem. They told me that my sister needed it more because she was just starting out in life, and that I'd figure things out on my own. But for me, that fund wasn't just about money. It was a symbol of all the sacrifices I'd made, all the hard work I'd put into being the responsible child. I had earned it. The worst part? I realized this wasn't the first time my dad had let my sister take the spotlight. Time and time again, she got what she wanted while I was pushed to the side. It was like they didn't care about my efforts, my dreams, my future. They just handed everything to her without a second thought. But that was it. I had had enough. I wasn't going to stand by and let them keep taking what was mine. My stepmom thought she could control my life, but I wasn't going to let her. I wasn't going to let anyone control my future anymore. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. And trust me, what I did next was something they never saw coming. I always tried to do what was right. I wasn't the wild child, always making noise or causing problems. No, I stayed quiet, focused, and worked hard to prove my worth to my parents. I thought if I kept my head down and did everything I was told, I'd get the love and support I deserved. But the more I tried, the more I felt invisible, like I didn't even exist in my own family. My sister, on the other hand, was the one who got everything. It wasn't just the big stuff, like birthday parties and shiny new cars, but the little things, too. If she had a school project, it was a big event. Everyone gathered around, offering to help, talking about how talented she was. She didn't even have to try that hard, and somehow everything she did was celebrated. When she went off to college, my parents were thrilled. They showered her with love and gifts, treating it like a huge achievement. But for me, the high marks, the volunteer work, the awards I earned, all of it was ignored. I remember one Christmas, my sister received a brand new laptop, a shiny one, fully loaded with all the latest software. I didn't even ask for anything big, just a new pair of shoes I needed for school. I didn't expect to be showered with gifts, but what happened next was the last straw. My mom looked at me and said, "You're not really the one who needs this, right? Your sister's got bigger dreams than you. She'll use it more." It stung hard, but I didn't say anything. I kept my thoughts to myself, not wanting to cause tension in the family. But deep down, I felt it. The resentment was building, and I couldn't stop it. Every time I worked hard for something, every time I put my heart into something, it felt like it was overlooked. The praise went to her. The attention went to her. And I was just there, left in the background. It wasn't just about the presents or the praise. It was the small things, the missed opportunities, and the sense that I could never measure up to her. My parents made it clear without saying it outright. She was the priority. I wasn't. Then came the day my dad promised me my college fund. That promise was my lifeline. It wasn't just money. It was my chance to escape the shadow of my sister and build a life for myself. I had worked so hard to earn it. I knew college would open doors for me, would give me a chance to finally be someone, not just the background character in my family's story. But when the day came, When I finally turned 18 and expected my dad to hand over what he'd promised, I was crushed. He didn't give me the fund. Instead, they handed it to my sister. She was going to use it for a trip she wanted to take, a trip she'd already been planning for months, a trip to Europe, for crying out loud. Meanwhile, I was stuck with the disappointment, trying to figure out how I would make my dream of going to college a reality. That was when I realized it wasn't just that I was overlooked. It wasn't just about my sister being the favorite. This was about me not being good enough in their eyes. No matter what I did, I wasn't going to be their golden child. And that realization, the hurt, the betrayal, it changed everything. It was time to do something about it. I wasn't going to let them ruin my future. I wasn't going to let them treat me like I was nothing. I didn't care if they were my family. If they wanted to play favorites, then so be it. I was going to take everything back. But first, I had to plan it all carefully. They wouldn't see it coming. They wouldn't know what hit them. The anger I felt wasn't something I could just shake off. It simmered inside me, and over time, I realized something. I didn't need their approval, their praise, or their money. I didn't need any of it. I could take control of my own life, and I was going to prove to them that I was more than just the forgotten child. But revenge isn't always about the grand gestures. Sometimes it's about the small details, the little moments that turn everything around. And that's exactly what I was planning. My own quiet, calculated revenge. I started looking into ways to get back what was rightfully mine. First, I focused on how to make my own path to success. I found a part-time job, working late hours, and poured everything I had into saving. Every paycheck went straight into my account, slowly but surely building the foundation I'd need to stand on my own. It wasn't going to be easy, but I had no choice. I had to do this for myself. Then I took it a step further. I started looking into a way to get back at them. Not just for the money, but for everything. The missed opportunities, the constant comparisons, the dismissal of my achievements. I realized the best way to show them that I was capable of everything they thought my sister would do was to beat her at her own game. It was my sister who had always been the center of their universe. So, how could I make sure they saw that I could be just as successful, if not more? The answer, it turned out, was staring me right in the face. My sister's supposed perfect future was all about appearances. She wanted to go abroad, flaunt her perfect grades, and show off a shiny career she had yet to build. But what if her perfect world was just a carefully constructed illusion? That's when the idea hit me. I began researching fake degree programs, certifications, and courses that could mirror everything she had accomplished. What if I got a degree from a prestigious-sounding university, one she could never have imagined going to? I wasn't going to steal her success. I was going to show them I didn't need their approval to thrive. And by doing this, I would prove just how easily it could be done without them. I researched everything meticulously, even contacting people who specialized in fake documents. I wasn't going to hurt anyone, but I was going to show them the truth in the most impactful way. My sister was handed everything on a silver platter because of who she was. What if I could prove that I too could have everything, but I would earn it differently, on my own terms? The plan started to take shape, and the more I thought about it, the more I realized just how easy it would be. With the fake degree, I would be able to present myself as someone who had made it, who had done what they thought only she could do. I'd show them that I could have the same life they dreamed for her, but without needing their help. Meanwhile, I kept up my job, saved more money, and kept my plans hidden from them. My family didn't suspect anything. They were still caught up in my sister's world of perfection, thinking they had done their part to help her succeed. They had no idea that I was quietly preparing to show them just how wrong they were. There was a sense of excitement in knowing that soon enough, everything would change. Soon, my sister's life, the life my parents had put on a pedestal, would be the very thing I could shatter without lifting a finger. Then the day came when I finally had everything. The degree was in my hands, and I felt a wave of power wash over me. I didn't need to tell them the truth. I didn't need their validation anymore. I had everything I needed. But I knew it was time to confront them, to make them see me the way I deserved to be seen. That's when the real game would begin. My revenge would be sweet, but it would be so much more than just taking back what was mine. It would be about proving that I was never the invisible child. I was someone capable of achieving what they thought only my sister could do. The tension was mounting, and soon, my family would realize that they'd made a huge mistake. The day of reckoning arrived faster than I expected. It was a Saturday afternoon, and my parents had invited me over for dinner. The atmosphere was warm, the kind of family gathering they always managed to make feel comfortable, at least for my sister. But for me, it was nothing more than another opportunity for me to blend into the background. This time, however, I wasn't about to stay silent. I walked into their house with my head held high, the weight of my plan filling me with confidence. My sister was already there, of course, bragging about her internship abroad and showing off the fancy things she had recently bought with the money our parents had thrown her way. As I stood in the kitchen, I could hear my mother's voice, soft and doting, praising her every move. I couldn't help but feel a pang of anger. Why did they never see me like that? But today was different. I waited until dinner was halfway through, the clatter of plates and soft chatter filling the air. Then, when the time was right, I made my move. I calmly stood up, excusing myself from the table. All eyes followed me as I walked toward the living room, where the framed degree I had fabricated was resting on the wall. Without a word, I picked it up and walked back to the table, placing it right in front of my sister. My family stared at it, their confusion growing by the second. I could feel their eyes boring into me as I spoke, steady and deliberate. I thought I'd show you something. Something to show that I can achieve everything you expected of her. The degree I earned, the future you all envisioned for her. I've worked for this too. The silence was deafening. My mother's face dropped and my father looked stunned, his face a shade of pale I'd never seen before. My sister. She was visibly shaken, her confident smile fading as she glanced nervously at me. It felt like time had frozen. This was my moment. The one where I could make them see me for what I truly was. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances, trying to process what was happening. I could see the doubt in their eyes, the creeping realization that something was wrong. They had always prided themselves on knowing everything about our lives, but here I was, holding something they never expected. You thought I was nothing, I continued, my voice growing firmer, but I'm capable of just as much as she is, and maybe even more. You've treated me like I didn't matter, as if my success didn't count. You gave her everything because she was your star. But look at this. Look at what I have done. Without your help, without your constant favoritism, I did it all myself. My father, still stunned, started to stammer. What is this? Where did you... This, I cut him off, is what you refused to see. This is the truth you ignored. You always thought my sister was the one who deserved the spotlight. Well, now I've taken it back. And it's more than just this degree. It's everything you've overlooked for years. I could see my sister starting to panic. She shifted uncomfortably in her seat, and for the first time in her life, I think she realized that she wasn't the only one who could succeed. The truth of the matter hit her just as hard as it hit my parents. My revenge wasn't about taking from her. It was about showing my family that I could stand tall on my own, that I didn't need their help or validation. But I wasn't done yet. I had one last card to play. I pulled out the second part of my plan, the records. I'd managed to get a hold of my sister's financial and academic records, including her internship acceptance letter and some key documents that she had always bragged about. These were things she had proudly presented to the family as proof of her success. Now, they were mine to expose. I think, I said with a smirk, it's time you saw the full picture. This is what she's been hiding from you all along. I laid the documents out one by one on the table. My sister's face turned bright red as she desperately tried to come up with an excuse. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. The truth was out there now, laid bare for all to see. Their expressions were a mix of shock, guilt, and something else. Maybe they were realizing how deeply they had failed me, how they had treated me like I was the invisible child, always overshadowed by my sister. Now, they saw the full extent of my struggle and the success I had achieved without them. But the real blow was still to come. I looked at my parents and calmly said, "This isn't about the degree or the papers. This is about how you treated me. For years, you thought I'd never amount to anything. but I've taken back what was mine. I'll never let you make me feel invisible again." The room was silent. My sister, utterly defeated, couldn't speak. My parents were lost for words, realizing they couldn't manipulate me anymore. I had reclaimed my life, my power, and my dignity. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about my liberation. I had shown them all who I really was. Someone capable of achieving everything they had taken from me, and I wasn't backing down. The aftermath of that night was both relieving and empowering. I had done what I set out to do. My parents, despite their attempts to gloss over it, couldn't deny the truth anymore. They had treated me like I didn't matter, like my achievements were insignificant compared to my sister's. But now they knew that wasn't the case. For the next few days, things were awkward between us. My parents tried calling, sending messages, and showing up at my door, but I wasn't interested. I didn't need to hear their apologies. Their words meant nothing to me now. For years, they had taken me for granted, and now that they needed something from me, they expected me to drop everything and help them out as I always had. But this time, I refused. I wasn't going to be their fallback anymore. My sister, on the other hand, avoided me completely. She probably felt humiliated, and honestly, she should have. I had worked harder than she ever had, and yet, all she had to do was show up and be the golden child to get everything she wanted. But now, the tables had turned. I had taken back everything she'd gotten so easily, and it felt incredible. She wasn't the perfect daughter anymore. She was just as flawed as I had always been. And now, she had to live with the knowledge that I had outdone her, without even trying to compete. The real win, though, was for me. I had finally found my voice, and I wasn't afraid to stand up for myself anymore. That night, I took control of my narrative. No longer would I let my parents treat me as if I didn't matter. I would build my life on my own terms, no longer relying on their approval or love. In the weeks that followed, I started to build the life I had always wanted. I took a step back from the toxic dynamics of my family and began to focus on myself. I started taking on projects that I had long ignored because I was too busy trying to earn their approval. I traveled, reconnected with old friends, and most importantly, I stopped apologizing for the things I'd done for myself. My career took off in ways I never thought possible. I started to see the fruits of my labor, and it felt better than any validation my parents could have ever given me. The satisfaction of knowing that I was successful on my own, without any handouts or special treatment, was worth more than any apology they could ever offer. As for my family, things remained tense. They would try to pull at my heartstrings, asking for help or offering fake pleas of regret, but I was done. I didn't need them anymore, and I realized that my happiness and success didn't depend on their approval. It took years for me to come to this realization, but when I finally did, I knew I would never go back. I didn't hear from them for a while after that. The calls, the texts, the visits, all stopped. At first, it felt strange. I almost missed the constant chaos that they brought into my life. But with time, I realized that silence was exactly what I needed. It was peace. I no longer had to worry about being anyone other than myself. I wasn't their burden to carry, and I wasn't going to let them make me feel like I was ever less than anyone else again. Then, one day, my mom reached out. She apologized, genuinely this time. She told me how much she regretted what she'd done. She admitted that she had been wrong about me, about my worth. She was no longer the mother who favored my sister, or the one who took me for granted. But by then, it didn't matter. I had moved on, and I wasn't willing to go back to the person I was before. I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't interested in playing the same game. I had found my strength. I had reclaimed my own life, and I wasn't going to let anyone, including my family, take that from me again. I didn't reply to her message. I didn't have to. I had taken everything back from my family, not just in terms of the degree, but in my sense of self-worth. And that was something that no one could take from me again. It wasn't about punishing them anymore. It was about me learning to stand up for myself and finally understanding my own value. That was the true revenge. I had won, and they were left with the consequences of their actions. For the first time in my life, I was free.